This is the most underrated coffee brewer out there, and in this video I'm going to show you what I like about it and why I think you have to have a look at it if you're into specialty coffee. I'm Ingo from Brewer, and now let's go. The BEHMOR Brazen addresses a topic that is actually the most important job of a batch brewer out there, and this is temperature stability. So you probably know, if you're into brewing or into coffee, that even slight differences in the brewing temperature that you're using are having a big impact on the taste of your coffee. So I usually, when I'm brewing coffee, are taking 93 degrees Celsius for a washed, for example. I'm taking a bit less for naturals or anaerobic processed coffees. But then if I'm brewing it at a bit higher or a bit lower temperatures, I really then directly taste and influence. And what is a bit an issue with most of the batch brewers out there is that this temperature stability and then consistency is a bit limited. And this comes from the constructions of these devices, because usually you have a cold water tank and then you have pumps or some solutions that are bringing then the water into a flow-through heating element, and then from this flow-through it is then dropping into the coffee bed. And what the BEHMOR Brazen is doing, it is actually imitating the way coffee is being brewed by professional brewers. So if you have then the kettles and then you're brewing the coffee manually, you are bringing the water from the top with a consistent temperature over your bed in some sequences of water pours. And this is exactly what this device is doing. So what they did was, and this is why the machine is looking a bit different from all the other brewers, they took a water kettle, put the water kettle on top of the brewer, and then the whole water is being heated like in a kettle, and then you have a hole, and in this hole you are going to then drip down the water in sequences over your bed. It is using a flat bottom filter, which can be this gold filter or a paper filter, and actually the spray head then has around the same size as the filter. So it's about a 9 centimeter spray head, a 10 centimeter filter. So the water is then being brought very evenly over your bed of coffee, like when you're doing it in the brewing. And it's also been programmed in a way that it releases water every 30 seconds. So every 30 seconds you get a pour. If you are into automatic mode, which most probably you are using then standardized, then you have about 150 milliliters of water that are being poured every 30 seconds. And like that, you then get a really nice extraction with extreme temperature control, but then also a nice control in the brewing procedure, which is then imitating the way the coffee is being brewed by baristas or brewers out there. The temperature of the device can be set in steps of 1 degree. So between 88 and 97, you can put it in 1 degree. So how exactly you like to have the temperature. But what's then also differently from this machine to any other brewer out there is that you're calibrating the device. So an information that a lot of people out there actually don't know is that the electrical components, they have variances, and these variances are usually like around plus minus 2%. So you're in the range of about 4%. So that means when you're brewing coffee with the kettle or with the brewer or whatever, and you're choosing, for example, a temperature of 90 degrees Celsius, it can be that today it's brewing with 91, tomorrow with 95. So you have actually that variances that are just into electrical components. And this is why you're calibrating the system. And with the calibration procedure, which is something that is unique for this brewer, you always then have this same temperature. So you're always then brewing with this 93 degrees, for example. So you have really then consistency between the brews. And then there is another thing which is then more important if you're, for example, traveling or if you're then communicating with other peoples, and this is the altitude correction mode. Because depending on where you are and which altitude, the boiling point of water is differently. And the system is then calibrating the whole temperature settings according to the altitude where you are. So depending on whether you are at sea level or at 1,500 meters in the mountains, the boiling point of the water is differently, and you can calibrate that in the system so that at the end then you're always in the same difference away from the boiling point, which is then actually what you want to have when you're brewing coffee, so that the taste and the extraction of your coffee is always the same. These are some features of this machine. And now we are going to have a look at it in detail. What you have got here on the top of the machine is this water tank where you then fill in the water. You can see here that you have a thermocouple which is then measuring the temperature, and in the middle you see then this hole, and it has actually a magnetic valve which is then releasing the water down into the spray head. If you are opening the device here at the front, you can see on the top the spray head. So the spray head has several holes. It is also shaped in a way so that the water is then being poured really down and is not flowing around, which is then sometimes happening when you just put holes into a spray head. So the spray head has a diameter of about 9 centimeters. And then below that, you usually are going to put your filter basket. So you have a filter basket that is coming standardized with this gold filter, but you will also then have the possibility to buy this paper filter. So I usually then brew, of course, with this paper filter. So you have a flat bottom filter. And the nice thing with this spray head is that you then really are evenly putting the water over these coffee beds that you have. Down there, you are then going to put your thermo carafe so that you can keep the coffee warm for quite some time. And this is more or less it. What's then also interesting about the device is that you can take out this filter basket and you can put any other device below it. So you can take, for example, a Chemex that you can put down there, or you can then also take a V60 that you can put down here. And if you're using an other device than the standardized carafe and filter solution, you are then also invited to not only do the automatic mode, which is then made for like about 600 to 1.2 liter brews. You can then also do smaller brews by manually releasing the water. So you have a manual mode where you can then release water, stop the release of water, and then do your own brew recipe that you would like to have on this batch brewer. So as I mentioned, right now you have actually two modes that you can use. You can use the automated mode and you can use the manual mode. What is happening when you're using the automated mode is that initially you press the start button, then the temperature is being heated up until the temperature that you would like to have to brew. So let's say, for example, 93 degrees. And when it reaches the temperature, it's going to pour a pre-soak over your coffee bed. Usually it's then putting around 150 milliliters. So it's not measuring the grams actually, it's measuring the time. So it's opening the valve for about 15 seconds and about 10 milliliters per second are coming out of the brewers. So this can vary slightly. So just for your understanding, it's not measuring the grams, it's then really measuring the time. But it's going to be landing at around 150 milliliters of water that are being then pre-soaked. And what's then also in the machine, you can set a pre-soak time to your liking. So you can set it from anything like 15 seconds up to several minutes. I often take, for example, 45 seconds or something like that. And then the coffee is being pre-soaked. And when then this pre-soak time has been finished, so it's like a countdown, then the first brew is being led over the coffee bed. And in the automated mode, what is happening is that then the shower heads are open for 15 seconds and then they're closed again for 15 seconds. So it's putting 150 milliliters of water, then it's stopping, then after another 15 seconds, so it's actually then the pouring is in sequences of 30 seconds. You see at time 0, it's pouring for 50 seconds, then it's waiting for 50 seconds. At 30 seconds, then it's doing another pour for 50 seconds. I hope you get it a bit, and I explained it understandably for you. So it's always pouring around 150 milliliter every 30 seconds over the bed until the container is empty. And then when it's empty, it's giving you a beep, and you can then wait until all the coffee is in your carafe, take it and drink the coffee. And then, as I mentioned before, you also have a manual mode. Manual mode is then quite simple. You're going to press start, so the temperature has been heated up to the temperature that you have preset. And then you have a button where you can then press and it releases water. You can stop and it stops releasing water. And like that, you can then just brew however you like. You can then even, in the setup that I showed you before, put, for example, a scale below your V60 and then do your recipe that you like to have on your V60, for example. You see that I'm quite excited and I quite like the machine, but there are also two things that I want you to know when you're working with the machine. So one thing is, when you're in this automated mode and with the carafe, then the amount of water that you're using is between 0.6 liter and 1.2 liter. So you're in this range. This is actually then a quite common range for batch brewing, but I just want to let you know. So for example, if you're like drinking a bit less of coffee in the day, you want to have brews that are below the 0.6 liter, then the machine is not perfect for you. You can still do it, like for example with this V60 solution, but then it's really in its sweet spot in this amounts between 0.6 and 1.2 liters. And then one other thing is when it comes to the carafe, I actually think it's working really well. I just hear some people that are then complaining a little bit. They say that the pouring out is not so perfectly. I'm just going to demonstrate it for you so that you can judge yourself. So when I'm taking the carafe, I will let it in my cup. So you can see that it's not 100% perfect, the release of the water. I think it's totally fine, but just for you to let you know and judge by yourself. What we are going to do now is we are going to have a look at the menu. I'm going to show you all the settings in the menu, and then we are going to do an automated brew and also a manual brew. So let's have a look at the menu here. So here we have the on-off button, so you can put the machine in standby if you don't need it. It's also nice if you are into a setting or something where you're kind of lost, or you started a brew and you want to stop it. So just press the off button and then the machine is going to stop. Here, the most important button for you in everyday use is then the start button. So just press the start button and then the device is going to brew the coffee for you. Now we are going into the menu because you have some settings. And if you go in the menu, the first thing you see is the so-called auto. So this means then at what time in the day the machine should start brewing you a coffee. So if you're an early bird, you may be taking 5 or 6, I don't know. What is your preference to drink your first coffee? I will probably set it to 7 o'clock for myself. And then I can go to the next menu point, and this is now then the pre-soak. So you can see with the set buttons, you can switch between minutes and seconds. So you can set it to any time that you like, between 1 and 4 minutes 55. So let's say, for example, as I said, I prefer to have something around 45 seconds pre-soak time. And then you can set it here just once, and then it's being set, and the brewer is then always waiting for 45 seconds when it did the pre-soak with the next brew. Then here you can choose the brew temperature. So as you can see, you can choose anything from 88 up to 97 degrees Celsius. You can then also switch between Fahrenheit and Celsius. So I'm going to set this to my 93 degrees. And here you are going to set the clock. So of course, if you want to brew the coffee at a particular time, the machine needs to know what actual time you have now. You can set this very easily here. And at the end is then the calibration. Here you have to think then in feet, and then it has then some steps where you can then define in which range you are in feet. This is something that you can easily find out then in the internet, on some websites or Google Maps, so that you then put in your altitude. And then here you also see the calibration sign. Calibration is super simple. You just open the machine on the top, you fill in the water until the line where it says calibration, and then you press start. You wait then for a couple of seconds, and then the machine is being calibrated. This is a procedure that you should do around twice a year. So every 6 months you should calibrate your device. That's it. That's all you can set on the machine. So when you're then going to brew, you just press either then start to just let the machine brew. You can then put auto so that the machine is starting to brew at the morning time that you want, or you can then go into this manual mode. In manual mode, you can then let the machine being heated up to the temperature that you like, and then with pressing the manual mode button, you're releasing water. With pressing it again, it's going to stop. I'm going to show you this then later when we do a brew. Good, so let's do now a brew in the automated mode, which is then the standard mode that you're going to use then for everyday consumption of coffee. And in this case, I'm going to brew 900 grams of coffee. I do a ratio of 1:15. So I have prepared 60 grams of coffee. I'm going to take my basket. I'm going to put in the paper filter. In this time, just put in the coffee. Prepare the bed so that the coffee is evenly distributed. Put it in, and then I'm going to pour my coffee in and pour it up to the line where it says 0.9 liters. Now let's check the settings that I have. So for this coffee, I'm going to make a pre-soak of 30 seconds. Then I'm going to choose 93 degrees Celsius. So everything is ready, and I can start the brew by pressing the start button. So I can see what the machine is now doing is it's starting to preheat. It's now at 24 degrees Celsius, so the water is being heated up until it reaches 93 degrees Celsius. So you saw how the machine has been heating up until it reached 93 degrees Celsius, and then it switched to pre-soak. So it has poured over the coffee and is now pre-soaking. Now the machine has switched from pre-soak to brewing mode, and it's brewing now every 30 seconds 150 milliliters of coffee, and is going on until the tank is empty. And that's it. All you have to do now is enjoy your coffee. To finish this off, I'm going to show you now how you can do an individual manual brew on the BEHMOR Brazen. So I'm going to take the V60 now, and I'm going to brew 300 grams of coffee. So I'm taking 20 grams of also a washed coffee from Peru, put it in my V60. Then I put the V60 below the device, and now I'm going to manual release. The brew time is still set to 93 degrees Celsius, so I must not forget to put water on top. In this case, it doesn't matter too much how much I put, because I'm going to start and stop the brew myself. So what I'm going to do now is press start and wait until the device has reached 93 degrees Celsius, and then I can start my brews. So now that the brew temperature is reached, I can do my manual brews, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in 60 grams every 30 seconds. So every 30 seconds I let the valve open for about 6 seconds, and this is going to start now. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm stopping, and then you see the counter is set to 0. And it's now waiting until then second 24, where I'm then going to add another 6 seconds, because 24 plus the 6 seconds that I brewed is then these 30 seconds that are my intervals. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to brew for 6 seconds. Then stop the brew, wait 24 seconds to the next one. And this is something that I'm going to do for 5 times until I have then my V60 brew. So this was my last brew. Now I let it finish, and then I have brewed myself 300 grams of beautiful washed Peruvian coffee in my V60. Voila! I hope this video was helpful for you. If you're interested in the BEHMOR Brazen, then head over to our website roastrebels.com. We have them in stock. We ship them all over Europe. We have a service center in Germany. We have a service center in Switzerland. So no matter where you're in Europe, we are going to provide you with an excellent service for this machine. And also, if you're then interested in other coffee topics, come to our website. We have a lot of topics when it comes to coffee brewing, coffee origins, but also coffee roasting. You find all of that, including my contact, on roastrebels.com.